Good morning, everyone. My name is State Senator Andrew Gounardes. I'm here joined with Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams and Jonas Shande from the Fiscal Policy Institute. And we are here to introduce and talk about a new bill that I will be introducing in the State Senate that was crafted in partnership with Borough President Adams, his team, the Fiscal Policy Institute, as well as the Legal Clinic at Brooklyn Law School, and Joe Toscano from the Beacon Network. And that is the Data, Labor, Compensation and Accountability Act. What this bill does is it ensures for the first time that the benefits created by individuals off the use of their personal data will finally be returned back to the people who created that data in the first place. We know, you look at the paper, you look at what's happening, big tech business has done phenomenal over the last year. They've been doing phenomenally for years. They are built on a model in this new data economy that works off extracting the personal data of individuals and then making billions of dollars off of that data, with nothing going back to us, the users who create that data in the first place. Our proposal is a first-in-the-nation proposal to finally reclaim the value of the work that we are doing for these tech companies and investing it back in our communities. I want to be very clear at the outset. This is not an anti-tech proposal. This is not an anti-business proposal. This is about responsible and equitable and fair tech. That's what we are talking about here. Years ago, if you had companies that were extracting resources from the environment, you'd have an expectation, and in fact, we do have an expectation, that they would pay us for the right to extract resources from the environment. We have an expectation that when we perform labor for companies, for our bosses, we get paid for that labor. That is exactly what is happening in the data economy today. An economy which, by some estimates, is between 7 and 10% of GDP. That number is only continuing to grow. Yet, when we think about the tech sector, there is no expectation, or there has not been an expectation, that we get compensated for the data that we provide or the work that we do on behalf of these tech companies. The mere fact that I happen to like pepperoni pizza and Bruce Springsteen and I wear a certain brand of clothing and I type that in an email or I put that on a social media profile, that makes money for companies. The fact that I click like on a picture or I enter in numbers on a reCAPTCHA on a website, that is, we are doing work for these companies that they are benefiting and profiting off of. We are trying to restore the balance. And in a time like this, right now, when we are emerging from this pandemic and when we are acknowledging the wholesale changes that have to be done in our economy, this is exactly the time to be having a conversation about the role of the data economy in our day-to-day lives and our role in that economy and our place in that economy and how we should be compensated for our participation in that economy. So broadly speaking, what our bill does, we see it right here. It will create, for the first time, the Office of Consumer Data Protection in the state of New York, requiring companies that profit off of the commercialization of users' personal data to register with the state of New York, register how many people in the state of New York they collect data from, and what their revenues are. It will then, we will have a statewide registry, and then we will assess a 2% tax based on the number of users that they have in the state as a way to then reinvest in workforce development, digital literacy, education, and closing the digital divide. We estimate that this proposal could raise somewhere in the hundreds of millions of dollars. If we take the stats that the data economy accounts for 7 to 10% of our GDP, New York State has a GDP of roughly $2.7 to $3 trillion. We estimate that the data economy provides up to $300 billion of economic value in this state. And we are asking to help rebalance the conversation and for a very small percentage of that to be reinvested back in our communities, because we have seen, unfortunately, because of this pandemic, the gaps and the deficiencies that exist in our digital infrastructure, in our digital literacy, in our forms of digital education, and in our workforce. And this proposal is meant to address that. I want to thank the Borough President for his partnership on this proposal. I want to thank Jonas from the Fiscal Policy Institute for his partnership and their partnership on this proposal. I want to thank the tech experts who are part of our working group to the Beacon Network, led by Joe Toscano, for helping us to craft this proposal, to understand the mechanics behind this proposal, about how the data economy functions. And I want to thank the law students at Brooklyn Law School for helping us workshop and think about the legal implications of our proposal. We think this is a sound policy. We think that this is an important conversation to be having. And again, this is not about penalizing companies. This is about restoring the balance and making sure that we, the users, and the data creators are being fairly compensated for the work that we are doing and providing for big tech. I would now like to call up for a few remarks the Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams.
Thank you so much, Senator, for this amazing concept. And I want to thank all the partners who have come together to deal with this important issue. We thought we were searching Google. Google was searching us. And we did not realize the profit that was associated with big tech. We did not realize that the mere fact you walk past Starbucks or walk past a company and you are pinged on what to purchase. You cannot use the commodity of others without paying them for that use. This is such an important bill because it's going to start an entire conversation on how do we start bringing the Internet of Things into paying for the services that they are using with everyday consumers. I am sure from this conversation, there's going to be a series of conversations of how do we rethink society, because this has often been off of the radar of everyday New Yorkers and Americans, and really throughout the international community. So I really take my hat off to the senator for being bold enough to state we must start looking at how do we ensure everyone pays their share of cost of doing business in this city. And when you think about this is real money. In the first quarter of 2021, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, and Google and other companies made $74.5 billion in the first quarter, more than double what they have earned in quarter one of 2020. And a large reason for this is that companies have done so well because data we are inputting, they're using it for profit. Every time we do these searches, you upload a picture or click on an item, we are creating valuable data that can be used by tech companies in a variety of ways, and we have ignored that for far too long. And when you look at the fact, a June 2020 statewide survey by Data for Progress found 79% of New Yorkers support a tax on digital advertising. We are finally getting it as New Yorkers that we should be paid for using our data. So today, this important piece of legislation we are unveiling is being introduced by the Senator Gounardes, is to create a consumer data tax. It is so important that we get behind this bill and ensure that it moves forward. And this is only going to implement a 2% tax on revenue generated by the sale of New York's personal data, as well as other aspects of this bill. And the smart thing about it is that the senator is identifying how do we use this money correctly. We're going to put the money that's raised by this new tax towards tech education. That's why we're here outside the Tweed Courthouse to talk about ensuring that we close the digital divide. We can close the digital divide by ensuring every time we use digital input, it's going to ensure input of real dollars into our schools and into our communities. Why is this important? According to the Urban League's report released last year, 40% of Black and Hispanic residents lack either mobile or home internet services, and 18% lack both. That's unacceptable. If we have not learned anything, we've learned during COVID-19 that internet, Wi-Fi services, and technology is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity, and this tech is going to help us ensure that we feel that necessity. Over the last 10 years, the numbers of jobs in tech has grown by almost 20%. It's time to ensure that we build out a pipeline of employment, a pipeline of knowledge, and a pipeline of skilled laborers. Again, I want to thank all the partners who have been a part of this initiative, and particularly I want to thank Senator Gounardes for his forward-thinking legislation to deal with a very real issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Borough President Adams. I think it's also important to note that what we do in this bill, building on the theme of what I said earlier, this is not meant to be punitive. We are creating certain exemptions for new startups. We want to allow new companies to innovate and to get created and started here in New York. We don't want to choke off innovation. We want to just responsibly regulate and make sure that they are participating in the data economy fairly and equitably. We are also not going after data that people are submitting themselves for things like banking transactions or stock trading or user-initiated data that they themselves are willingly giving up because they have to interact through their apps or their computers or whatever else. We are talking about the fact that companies are just making money off of our own personal characteristics, off of our own online behaviors. The commercialization of the data is what we are focusing here on, and that is what is so critically important. I now want to call up for a few words one of our partners from our working group. That's Jonas Shandai from the Fiscal Policy Institute. Jonas?
Thank you, Senator. My name is Jonas Shandai. I'm the Chief Economist at the Fiscal Policy Institute. I'm here to thank and applaud the vision and the forward-looking approach to policy demonstrated by Senator Gounardes and Borough President Adams. I think this is a great bill. In economics, we usually say there's no such thing as free lunch. And for a very long time, data companies and internet companies were having our lunch for free. At the Fiscal Policy Institute, we estimate that just by applying the 2% tax, we'll be able to generate as much as $1 billion in new revenue from the internet and data companies alone. Now, of course, the universe of data is much larger, and the potential for revenue generation in this bill is much larger. It is going to be used, the funds are going to be used to bridge the data divide and correct a lot of inequalities that we have to deal with. So I once again thank you, Senator, and you, Borough President, for your forward-looking and vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas. If this bill gets enacted, if we are able to successfully pass the Data, Labor, Compensation, and Accountability Act, it will be the first place in the world where we are actually requiring companies that commercialize off of personal data to then compensate people for the use of that data, for the value of their labor for creating that data. No other jurisdiction in the world has attempted this or has done it. We would be the first here in New York, which is why we are incredibly excited about this proposal and why we have a very strong working group that has helped advise us every step of the way to make sure that we are capturing appropriately and properly the full universe of what we are talking about here. We are introducing the bill today, and we hope that this will be the start of many public conversations about what it is that we as New Yorkers and we as just individuals across the board are giving up to the world of big tech, to big data, and what we should be expecting in return for that. And it's my hope that we can see this enacted, if not this legislative session, then certainly by the beginning of the next legislative session. But it's important that we start this conversation now. This is a moment of transformation. This is a moment to throw out the old way of thinking of things and to make sure that the 21st century is guided by the principles and the systems that are shaping the 21st century, and data is it. That's why this proposal is so important. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we're happy to take any questions that you have at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
All
good
right,
job,
good stuff.
brother.
Good stuff.
Go and run this.